On this episode of Imagine, Create, Inspire.
The South has always been my homeland, my hometown has always been a source of, inspiration and also a source for me finding a concept for these records.
So you're maybe you're inspired by a visual piece of art?
It could be a visual piece of art.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of impressionist painters, and one of my favorites is Monet.
Yeah.
And I was at MoMA up in New York, and I saw a Monet exhibit that I just felt like music was pouring out of me, during that exhibit.
So elaborate on this if you can.
Sure.
You were really impressed by you maybe have seen that picture in a book before, but you saw it live and it struck you.
The size of it.
Yeah.
He did some works that were just really huge, and I had no idea. I've seen those works before, but when you see it in person, the scope of it and how big it is, it just kind of takes your breath away. And, that inspired me. I left just feeling like, man, I just want to write some music. I'm just on a high right now. And music started coming out. I think that was right before the Songs from the Deep album came out. Yeah. So I was in a space where I was feeling creative, and everything that I saw and everything that I took in, kind of turned into music.
You are listening to Imagine, Create, Inspire, the podcast. Join host Bruce Andrews in conversations with creatives. Every artist has a story, and the struggle is real to stay inspired and in the flow. Join in the conversation by leaving us your comments, and thanks for listening.
Hey everybody, welcome to the podcast where our credo here at the Shelby County Arts Council is Imagine, Create, and Inspire. 3 words in a very deliberate sequential order, one that leads to the other. Imagination leads to creation, creation leads to inspiration, and inspiration, when properly applied, produces hope, and hope is a commodity. Hope is fuel for the human soul, because the opposite, Eric, of imagination, creation, and inspiration might well be stagnation, inflammation, and polarization.
Oh, I love it.
So, we're all about the creative flow. So That's what the
Exactly.
discussion's about, the conversations are about, and I cannot think of any more magically creative cat than Eric Essix. Thank you for being here, man.
Thank you for having me, Bruce. It's a pleasure.
Look, you're 27 albums.
Yeah.
What is that, 9 times 3? Is that 27 albums and 28 fixing to pop?
Yep.
Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Well, the last one, Songs from the Deep, was my third or second partnership with Light Entertainment and Virgin Music, the revamped Virgin Music label, distributed that last record, and they're also going to distribute this one. I'm always amazed, whenever I finish a project, I'm always amazed that since 1988, my first record came out. I had no idea that I would be here now. But as you said, you just got to keep grinding, and my imagination never stops. My mind never stops. I'm already thinking about the next project.
You must be, because
Yeah.
I hope that it resonated with everybody, that number 27 was like that, and going into number 28, how significant that is. That's an amazing amount, and that's albums, projects, not songs.
Yeah. It's just I always say that I just kind of keep my head down, and when I'm not really a prolific writer when it comes to composing music. I get in a space where ideas start to flow, and it may be one thing that'll inspire it, one event, something that I see on television, another form of art, some other music that I hear.
So you're maybe you're inspired by a visual piece of art?
It could be a visual piece of art.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of impressionist painters, and one of my favorites is Monet.
Yeah.
And I was at MoMA up in New York, and I saw a Monet exhibit that I just felt like music was pouring out of me, during that exhibit.
So elaborate on this if you can.
Sure.
You were really impressed by you maybe have seen that picture in a book before, but you saw it live and it struck you.
And I'll tell you why, because just the size of it.
Yeah.
He did some works that were just really huge, and I had no idea. I've seen those works before, but when you see it in person, the scope of it and how big it is, it just kind of takes your breath away. And, that inspired me. I left just feeling like, man, I just want to write some music. I'm just on a high right now. And music started coming out. I think that was right before the Songs from the Deep album came out. Yeah. So I was in a space where I was feeling creative, and everything that I saw and everything that I took in, kind of turned into music.
That album is a great one, like so much jazz, including yours, and I listen to a lot of your catalog. The algorithm feeds it to me. You'd be pleased to know that. Yeah.
Thank goodness for that algorithm.
But you have this propensity to be atypically mellow and melodic, like a lot of smooth jazz artists. Like people were going to diss smooth jazz or contemporary jazz. They say, well, it's limited improvisation. It's too much melody. Maybe it's too mellow. But like that. Is it Walk on like the Wind that's on that one?
Yeah, like
yeah. I mean, like when you kick down on that one.
Yep.
That's like you get into that. I don't know what that is. That Weather Report fusion gear.
Yeah. There's some of that in there.
So you can you can toggle back and forth between those. How do you think about that when you're innovating or producing?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I've been asked that question before. And to be honest with you, Bruce, I really don't think about the music that I write. It kind of comes out. I will sketch it out, in the beginning with maybe I'll open my studio up and I'll get an idea and just put down a really, really basic sketch of what I'm thinking about and what I'm feeling and what I'm hearing. And then it just kind of comes out and I flesh it out. But there's no reason, there's no form, there's no intent. It just kind of comes out. And I say all the time that my music just barely kind of fits into the smooth jazz format.
I would agree.
Yeah, because it really isn't. There may be, I'm blessed that there may be one or two songs from each record that kind of barely fit into the format, But there's no intent. It's just whatever comes out.
Well, genres are only good for... people to mentally or digitally categorize things as far as people's listening experience.
Exactly.
I mean, we're close to the same age. I'm a little older, but I mean, like my casual exposure to jazz, a lot of people our age was the same. George Benson, the Crusaders, the Yellow Jackets,
all that,
and before that, Weather Report, are in that same time space.
Herbie Hancock. All those
and something would hit pop radio.
Yeah.
And it like Breezin' or Masquerade. And,
yep.
And he would like, what is that?
Yeah, what is it?
Yeah. That's another conversation. There's so many conversations to be had with you. I'm so fortunate to have you here to ask you in person. That's why I prefer these things in person. So thanks for coming down.
Oh, it's my pleasure. My pleasure.
I can't wait to have you here on the 31st of July with the band.
That'll be our third time here.
Yeah. That's awesome, man.
It's incredible.
And there'll be another. Because you'll make another album.
Oh, yeah.
You'll be like Chicago, man. You're going to have to start naming your albums by number.
By number, yeah.
Like 2030, it's going to be Eric Essix 45.
I'm going to tell you, you're really saying something there because the hardest thing for me to do now is find a title for these records. So I might just have to start numbering them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bob James did that too.
The Deep was the Deep South, is that?
That's exactly right.
Gotcha. Well,
I've always the South has always been my homeland, my hometown has always been a source of inspiration and also a source for me finding a concept for these records. Once I get a concept for a record, man, it's easy from that point on.
So much to be said for that.
Yeah, like with Southbound, it started with the Southbound album. And then Somewhere in Alabama, and then Birmingham, and then Evolution, which was commemorating the anniversary of the 16th Street church bombing, and Songs from the Deep, the Gospel album, Abide With Me. Once I have that concept, then I can build on that really quickly. The ideas start to flow. And this new record, Stride, the one that's coming out, has been difficult because I didn't have that concept, that thing that just held everything together. So this one I had to kind of grind out, tune by tune. But typically I like to have some kind of concept to build that album on from.
Right.
And so it has some kind of arc a logical beginning and end.
So you would say, I mean, that's an interesting thing that we could pass on to the youngins.
Mm-hmm.
You would say that this project would be a good listen from front to back.
That's the whole idea, is that it be something that you can listen to that first song, it flows into another one, and before you know it, you've gone on a journey to the
Because
end of
that's
the record.
new. I mean, that's like new but
know.
old. 'Cause,
Yeah,
I mean, back in, it used to be the thing, and now downloading singles is
it's a singles world now.
That's right.
And I've done some singles from the records that I put out, but my concept has always been to do albums. I know a lot of artists that are only doing singles now. They're not really doing albums; they're just putting these singles out, and I'm resisting it.
Well, it seems like you can do both. I mean, you're doing it now. You released that single with Ruben Studdard, right?
Ruben, yeah, which is doing really well. And Ruben's just amazing, fantastic artist to work with.
You got some roots with him. I mean, you go way back with him, right?
It's a really interesting story, and you probably know that over the years, since like 1993, I've always done work in the schools. Schools here in Alabama, the Arts Council had a rural arts touring program, is what they called it, where we would go into schools in rural parts of the state of Alabama. And one year, we did kind of broke tradition with that program, and we did some schools in the city of Birmingham. And we did a concert, History of Jazz, I think it was, at Huffman High School. And this guy gets up. We always have Q&A at the end. This guy gets up, and he said, "Mr. Essix, what do I need to do to prepare to get into the music business?" And I said, "Well, what do you do?" And he said, "Well, I'm a singer." And then all the students started screaming, sing, sing something. And so this guy sang, and everybody, I look back at the guys in the band, and everybody was like, "Whoa, this young guy can really sing."
Yeah.
And I told him, I said, "Hey, with a voice like that, whatever you want to do in the music industry, you can achieve it." It turned out to be Ruben Studdard.
Wow, man. you planted that seed of greatness in him. You flipped that switch.
Turned out to be Ruben.
You flipped that imagination switch.
Oh, yeah, he hit it. No, he hit it and kept it on. It's still on. He's still doing great work. But I saw him years later at Workplay.
Yeah.
He was singing there. And I said, "Man, who is this guy?" Because he, of course, growing up, this was 9 years later. And afterwards, I went up to him and said, "Hey, man, you sound great. You sound amazing." He's like, "Mr. Essix, you don't remember me?" I said, "Where would I remember you?" And he told me, I was like, "I remember you."
Yeah.
And I said, hopefully we'll get to work together sometime, And sure enough, here we are.
Does he do other tunes on that album? I mean, that's such a great arrangement, that Bill Withers classic.
I wish we had done one other, but I didn't want to push it. I said, let's just do this one. And it came out so great, I was like, okay, we'll
man,
just go with
that's a great recording.
Thank you.
So much space,
Yeah.
A lot of space on that record. It's really nice.
Use real strings, and that's something that I've wanted to do for a long time. And harmonica.
A live chromatic player.
Yeah.
That was awesome too.
Yeah, he was really good. He was from London.
Very Stevie Wonderish.
Very Stevie Wonderish.
On his delivery.
Yeah.
Super cool.
Yeah, he's actually a drummer.
Is he
plays
really?
Plays harmonica too. Paul Levitt. He's
Heck of a player.
From the UK. Yeah, good player.
Heck of a player, man.
Yeah.
So we share some history. You're not. I share an Eric Essix characteristic. I miss the tall, dark, and handsome DNA, but it's too late for that. But we did. We in the 80s. I think we both worked at UPS.
Have we talked about this?
I don't think so.
I don't think we have.
I caught it somewhere. I forget where. And then when you started talking about the because I was they're trying to do some reading. I said I knew cursory things. I said, well, I know Eric went to Berkeley and so what happened before that. And so I heard you mention in an interview or in some type or something I read that prior to that you were at UPS for 10 years.
11 years. Yeah.
Yeah. I was there from like 79 on the preload from like 78 or 79 to like 82, something like that.
Bruce, I started in 1979.
Yeah.
November of 1979, peak season.
I was on the preload.
I was on the preload. We had to have known each other.
We were probably slinging boxes on that line.
We had to be. Unless you were They had two lines,
east
right?
East and west, or north and south, something like that.
So maybe you were on another line.
Yeah.
I didn't see you. But
started like 2 a.m. in the morning,
Yeah.
and then end in the
about 8, 9,
Yeah,
9
so you could
o'clock
go and
when
do
the drivers
something
got
else.
there. Yeah,
which
yeah.
is what I was doing.
Well, I know we've seen each other
Yeah.
and talked to each other.
Dadgum, I just miss greatness.
I just miss greatness.
No telling what kind of scallywags I was hanging with. I could have been hanging with you.
Were you playing music then?
I was, yeah. I mean, I
Okay.
was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The,
I hadn't started playing in the club scene in Birmingham
Yeah.
yet. I came out of church, so I was playing in church, but I hadn't gotten into playing in any of the venues until like about 84 maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, about 84, 85.
So, so that was kind of, so I can identify with, like the children of Israel in the desert,
Right.
They're the creative dudes
Right.
stuck on
doing
doing this all
slinging packages.
I do remember one thing about it. You had to, I was most of the time slinging them this way.
Uh-huh.
So I had a really well-developed latissimus dorsi on one side and not so good on the other side. He's for one side, he's really in good shape. Yeah, but like, wasn't it right after that? Or during that time, you were like thinking, I'm going to take this music career next level.
Yeah,
and by doing it, so what flipped the switch for, hey, it's going to be Berkeley?
Man, at that time, of course, there was no internet or anything
Yeah.
like that. But I had heard from so many people. I went to high school in Florida. And I don't think you knew this.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I went to high school down in near Orlando in Maitland, Florida. And there were people talking about the University of Miami was a place to go if you were interested in music. And I think around that same time, Jocko had been there and was living down there, teaching down there or something. Pat Metheny had come through there. And so I was like, man, University of Miami. And I asked my mom if I could go to school there. She was like, absolutely not. You're coming back to Birmingham, when you get done with high school. And so I was like, oh, well, kind of got that idea out of my head. And a little while later, there was a guy here in Birmingham who was going to school at Berkeley, or who had gone to school at Berkeley, and was telling me about it. And I was like, man, that sounds like the place I want to be.
Yeah.
And a few years later, I actually got up the courage to go up there and just kind of check the school out. Absolutely loved it, and said, hey, sometime at some point in my life, I'm gonna apply to go to school here, and I did. And because I was working at UPS, I started driving. So I was making good money then.
Yeah.
I was like, well, I'm gonna hold on a little bit and make some of this money. I applied, didn't go. My application ran out, and I had to apply again. Well, it turns out the second time I applied for a scholarship and got it, because I had gotten a record deal at that time.
Oh, wow.
With Nova Records out in Los Angeles, and was working on my second record with them. And as my audition tape, I sent the record in, and of course, the folks at Berkeley saw that, and they were like, "Okay, this guy's already kind of making his way," and I got a scholarship.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so that's how I wound up going.
So when you went to Berkeley, I mean, generically speaking, it was everything you thought it'd be and more.
And more, yeah.
So the I think that brings up sort of a contextual conversation. I'd love to have a little bit of with everybody that's creative, but especially at your level, because there's always this general idea of this balance. I mean, to push it to the limit, I'll say, I don't need interaction with a live instructor or live. So I can learn from YouTube.
Yeah.
Or I can learn from other people digitally.
Right.
And there's a little bit of truth to that.
Yeah.
But there's no truth to it if it excludes human interaction.
Absolutely.
So can you kind of give your version of, the difference between what happens when the chemistry of musicians hanging together and always trying to seek the next level?
I certainly can, because coming from Birmingham at that time, there were some good musicians here, and I managed to latch on to a few of them that I learned from. But at Berkeley, that was amplified and exponentially, because everybody, there are tons of great musicians there that I got an opportunity to play with. Some who wound up being in my band. I think around 1991, I put a band together that was three-fifths musicians from Berkeley.
Wow.
But yeah, meeting musicians and sharing music, a lot of music that I'd never played before. I had never really played traditional jazz before. Never had any players that I could, that were my age that I could relate to play with. So I did a lot of that. And some of the finest instructors I've ever met. Just I never had a guitar teacher before. I had a guitar teacher when I first started playing who taught me how to tune the guitar, and that was it. And I learned how to tune, and I was on my own from that point on. I read books and that kind of thing.
Up till Berkeley,
you
didn't have
no formal music training. When I got accepted to Berkeley, I knew that I had to learn some theory and harmony. So I took a couple of courses over at UAB just to kind of, familiarize myself with some level of music theory before I got there. Thank God I did that, because those were some of the classes that really kind of hung me up when I was there. That and ear training, which I have a great ear, but being able to sing solfege, and read notes and sing those notes was extremely difficult for me initially. After maybe second year, I started to get the hang of it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, interacting with musicians and instructors on that level, constantly. And the thing about Berkeley was that it's an experience I'll probably never have again in life, is you're consumed with music, you're involved in music 24/7. Yeah. It's just all in all the time. Yeah. And you're around these other musicians who are extremely talented and just as driven, if not more so than you are. Mm-hmm. And all of that rubs off and feeds into your own spirit.
Get a little bit of every one of them.
Yeah. And man, I was consumed with it. I was into it constantly and just trying to soak up all the information that I could.
So it's probably impossible to be in that environment and develop what I like to call genre bias, I'm just into this, and whether it's blues, R&B, or or a certain flavor of jazz or whatever. I mean, you're getting washed over by everything from classical to straight ahead jazz.
Yeah, you really are. Yeah. It's a jazz-based school, and the curriculum is jazz-based. At that time, I don't know what it's like now, but all of the books and materials were all rooted in jazz. Yeah. But they had a rock program there, and of course, me coming from the South and being heavily influenced by blues and heavily influenced by gospel music, I brought all of that with me to Berkeley, and kind of put the jazz with it. And interestingly enough, when I got there and people found out about this guy who's from Birmingham, Alabama, who played gospel music, I wound up playing in the Harvard Gospel Choir, the BU Gospel Choir, all the gospel choirs in Boston. Because of this one music
director. You were like the purple cow, man.
I was the guy.
Like, that guy. He knows what's up.
He knows what's up. He's got that southern thing and that greasy, rhythm thing. Yeah. So I played in a lot of the gospel groups. But yeah, I brought all that stuff with me, and the jazz portion of it was just it went through the roof at that point. And it was so cool. I got to mix what I already knew with jazz. One thing I discovered really quickly when I was at Berkeley, because there's so many great players, is that I had to learn how to be myself and find a lane. Yeah. Because there were already so many extraordinary guitar players, especially in the jazz world.
Yeah, if you start constantly, because I saw you write, I think you maybe updated your website, or you wrote somewhere that in your later, more recently, start to say in your latter years, but more recently, the issue of speed, like that kind of thing is, or being a guitar slinger, has just become a side thing. Yeah, it's more about the soul and tone.
And composition.
Which I know your core is spiritual. And a lot of your music speaks to that, and so maybe contextually, as Hebrews 11:1 says, faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. So that's so mystical and beautiful. Yeah. And I feel like music is that way. Yeah. When it's to me, when somebody asks me, I got Eric Essix CDs, why should I come see him live? You know what I mean?
Yeah. My answer to that would be, because it's a totally different experience. We had a band. I guess Kelvin left the band to be a producer maybe about 5 years ago.
Kelvin Wooten.
Kelvin Wooten.
Yeah.
And it was myself, Kelvin, Sean, Michael Ray, who you know, and PJ and Kelly. And that band, along with a band that I had called Modern Man, the approach to those songs that were on the recordings, those songs would sound different every time we performed them. You know, and those guys.
Not to mention the energy.
Yeah, and the energy.
Sean Michael Ray.
Man, yeah, Sean is he's a force of nature.
Yeah,
you know?
he's drinking some. Yeah, he got some.
And he's been like that ever since I've known him. I've been
really?
playing with Sean since he was 18 years old.
Yeah.
Same way all the time, consistently. You know, he plays at a high level with a lot of energy. And just imagine having 4 guys behind you on stage that are always playing at a high level, always improvising, always taking those songs.
He knows too. You know, you do this too.
Mm-hmm.
You can sense what the audience wants.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a good example of that is I forget what song you always do this in, but Sean always sneaks it in, like when he does that Tower of Power. Riff, and everybody, even people who not straight up Tower of Power fans, will be like, I know what that.
I know that.
I know what that is.
Yeah,
that feels good.
Yeah,
and it just bringing them back in.
Right,
you know,
right.
Like stretch out a little bit, get them in the weeds, and bring them back in.
And bring them back.
It's like you guys got that feel to do that live.
It's the players. You know, I have to give a lot of credit to whatever success I've had in the industry and as a live performer to those guys, because they just really they bring it out of me. You know, I'm nothing without them.
Well, that's mighty humble of you to say, but they are great players.
Yeah, great players.
PJ, who's going to play with you when you come to the Arts Council here at Song Theater?
I think it'll be the same guys minus Kelvin. We've got a young keyboard player now, Cameron Sankey, who actually I played with years ago when he was a young man. I think he might have been a teenager too at that time. But Cameron is now in the band, playing most of the gigs with us, and very similar to Kelvin in the sense that he brings a spirit of adventure to the music. You know, you never know what he's going to do.
Right.
He's always improvising, reharming stuff. And that's the kind of stuff that I feed off of, on stage. I don't really want it to be I've been conditioned now with all these great players where I don't really want it to sound the same every time. I want it to go left, because then that pushes me to explore as well.
I hope everybody's hearing that, because there's so many aspects, the deeper aspects of this conversation. It's like, I saw when we were putting in this latest project studio, we were looking at plug-ins, and there's a plug, and you've probably seen it. There's a plug-in that, you can sing a melody line and then apply guitar modeling to it or key, so I mean, if you were to take that to the nth degree, you if you didn't know any better,
right,
you might say, well, I don't need no stinking musicians, It'd be like, and then you miss the whole. It's like this live performance has got so many aspects. Not like one of them would be, like you said, the connection with the audience.
Right.
The other would be the interaction with the players. But another one is almost, again, for lack of a better term, mystical. That's because it's never going to happen again.
Right. It's yeah.
And you're watching it real time.
Right, in real time.
And people are playing it. And the other aspect that's hard to describe is there is a intrinsic human thing, I think, that you appreciate something when you know it's been worked for.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
So if I see 5 guys and I know that together they've invested about 250,000 hours, I'm like, damn. I mean, I don't know any other way to put it.
Yeah.
Except that there's a level of appreciation that that's undefinable. And
yeah, we come off stage sometimes, even still today, and you'll have a set that just kind of transcends everything. Can't really put your finger on what it is, but it just felt good, and musically everything was on point and was happening. And, we used to consistently have those like every night with a couple of bands that I played with. every night we just walk off stage just shaking our heads like, what just happened? Everything just kind of went to a whole nother level, and it's kind of mystical in a way.
Yeah.
It's spiritual.
It is.
And I always say, in the case of the bands that I play with, that I've been so blessed to play with, musicians, we're all friends. And we've cultivated these relationships over decades. Like Sean and I have been playing for 30 something years together. You've been playing with somebody that long, a lot of things happen within the course of a night that, and sometimes they happen. We'll actually play the same notes or play the same lick, and I'll just kind of look back at it.
Intuitively.
We're doing this again,
Yeah.
And that happened so much with Kelly, my sax player.
Yeah, he's so good.
Yeah, we've gotten to the place now where we can play melodies and it's seamless. It's like one voice, and we know how to just, we just know how to do it. It's just after years and years of playing. Both of those guys were in the very first band that I was ever in. Yeah, as a solo artist. So we've been playing together a long time.
That's so cool.
Yeah,
that just says it all. I love it when I'm right.
Right?
Don't you?
I do.
It
doesn't happen that often.
I know it. Well, to be clear about what I just said, I mean, it's almost impossible to be right about this subject definitively because it is so philosophical and so intuitive. But you just know that it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's not the same as some plastic banana digital created. I mean, that serves its purpose.
It's great.
You can make commercials with it. You can maybe sketch out ideas for songs, that kind of thing. So there's no. I'm not dissing it. I'm surrendering to it.
Right.
Right. Surrendering to the algorithms and the plugins and all that stuff. I'm beat down. I'm good with it. But I still love to see a live band. And I think maybe the positive of coming off of COVID is people feel so untied and unfettered.
Yeah.
And you and I were talking about before this recording session the expense of touring now, and you're fixing to hit the road again.
Yes.
And having to consider that expense, and that one maybe motivational factor is it's just like we've been tied down so long. We've been in a sterile environment. You and I both know enough artists that I love to hammer them all the time with this, like pre-COVID.
Right.
Almost every artist, and visual artist, every kind of artist, probably said something like this: "Man, if I could just be left alone, if I could just get away from the world, get away from the rat race, if I could just get away, and then boom, you got your wish.
You got your wish."
And it wasn't so cool.
No, it wasn't.
Because human interaction is key.
It's key. It's key. I was one of those guys. I used to say all the time, man, if I could just have nothing to do but write and record.
You got your wish.
And I got my wish, and I didn't care for it.
So now that I guess what I'm trying to say is now that things are so prohibitive or challenging to tour, I mean, you want to do it anyway because I'm betting the people show up.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, they're like, I know it's going to cost some money for me to get down there and it costs some money to get the tickets, but I want the experience.
I want the experience. So in one way, I guess it's a great time to be on the road.
Yeah. So talk about let's wrap up that way. Talk about what you're doing now. You're going to tour for the first time in
an actual tour where we are doing several cities within the region and outside of the region. This is the first time in. Oh man, since 19 maybe 96 or so.
Wow, there's people listening that ain't even born yet.
Yeah. We used to do it all the time. I mean, with Modern Man in that particular band, right after I got out of Berkeley, and we did a record called Third Degree Burn, and Lil John Roberts, myself, Matt Rohde, Melvin Butler, and Sean. Man, we get a 15-passenger van. We played everywhere: New York, Boston, Detroit. We just get in the van and go.
Yeah.
And that just became increasingly difficult to do. At some point, and I just stopped doing it. I had a kid, and then I started doing a lot of sideman work. I worked with Peebo Bryson and a bunch of other guys, and didn't do it for a long time. And now. In fact, Sean was saying the other day, he's like, "Man, I can't wait to get back in the van." These are guys that are toured the world, you know,
It's
at
like-
the
it's
highest level.
But it's like grown men because they've been caged up, you know, putting the band back together. It's almost like the Blues Brothers movie or something. The band.
And Sean's like, man, I can't wait to get back in the band. It's like, you know, so it's a bonding experience. It's a lot of fun. You know, you're not in an airport waiting and, you know, with delays and all that kind of stuff.
Seeing the country.
And
Yeah.
seeing the country,
Yeah.
you know, you can stop when you want. And
Yeah.
it's liberating in a way, you
Yeah.
know, from some of the touring that we've done in the past or here lately, you know. So we're excited about it, man. Excited about getting on the road and, you know, meeting people
Yeah.
along the way and communicating in that spiritual thing, but between the band members, which translates into the music on stage because there's a closeness, there's a camaraderie,
Right.
you know, that you're building on by being in that closed environment
Yeah.
and having conversations. We have some amazing conversations while we're on the road too.
Right.
All those things I think contribute to the music and taking the music to another level.
And so is that you? Will you primarily be performing the new album? Is that along with your favorites in the set list? that kind
Yeah,
of-
you know what's crazy, and I heard another artist on NPR say this yesterday, is people, even though I keep putting these new albums out, man, I will actually only add probably one song from the new album to the set list because people want to hear
They don't know it yet.
yeah, they don't know it yet, and they
Yeah.
want to hear the old stuff.
That's a pretty interesting philosophy of building a set list.
Yeah. One of my favorite musicians, Alex Bunyan, who I used to tour with at one time, jazz musician. His set hasn't changed very much since the time that I used to tour with him, which
Yeah.
was about 10 years ago.
Right.
It's because the songs that he plays are the songs that people want to hear.
Right.
And I've kind of gotten to that place, you know, in my career where I got to play Rainy Night in Georgia. I've got to play Creole Strut. I've got to play Sarah Smile.
Yeah.
I got to play People Get Ready.
Yeah.
All those songs that, you know, when I was kind of on the ascent as an artist, people came into my journey with those particular songs. So now I got to play them all the time.
Right.
And it's a good thing I like them because
Yeah. That's a good thing you can improvise too.
yeah, and
they're
we
not
can
the
improvise.
same, but
yeah.
you know, like the Rolling Stones, man.
Yeah,
If they don't
yeah.
play Satisfaction.
Exactly.
Just like
Yeah.
how I use that example, like how many decades could you do it? Is well, there's the experiment.
Yeah.
You know, right before
yeah,
you.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to do it. So we'll probably play one or two from this new record. And then most of the stuff that we do will be from some of the past.
So you're going to
past
debut
records.
the record in Huntsville, I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The release, the formal national release is July 1st. So
Right.
we're fortunate that I booked this this gig in Huntsville, which is a big gig for us. We play it every year, and it's an outdoor show and a huge turnout for for those shows. Fortunate that it also turned out to be the release date for the record.
Yeah.
So we're trying to kind of making it a release concert.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you before we wrap? I'm thinking of questions I wanted to ask you, and one of them is probably none of my business, but I'm gonna ask you anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, 2010 you took the job or something like that with Alice Stephen.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now, I'm just guessing you got some pretty significant names in your cell phone, that you didn't have before as a result of
Yeah.
Have you
Yeah.
been able to? To call on any of those folks to collaborate with you as a result of that? I mean, because that's such a great experience, and I'll just tell you straight up, Birmingham has once again advantaged from you.
Mm-hmm.
You've been blessing people with great seasons and
Thank you.
superb talent,
Thanks, Bruce.
and it's just been awesome. But
Yeah.
I mean, I wonder if you, other than the paycheck,
Yeah.
what's the benefits of that?
Well, ethically, I haven't exercised any kind of opportunities to work with some of those artists because I don't want people to think, I booked them because I did, whatever. I just want to keep everything above board. But there is one, or there are some artists that I have, because of my association with them at the Alice Stevens Center, used them on one of my records, and that's the Quilters of Gee's Bend.
Oh, cool, yeah.
Yeah, and I told them when they came to the center, not only they actually made a quilt. They were there for several days, and in the process of that time, they made a quilt, and in the lobby of the Alice Stevens Center, and while they're making that quilt, they sing.
Yeah.
And, dude, I mean, there were a couple of times that I just, was brought to tears just from the singing.
Just so real.
Yeah, it's so real. It's so spiritual. It's so Alabama. It's just so earthy. And I told him, I said, at one point in my life, we're going to work together.
Yeah.
And I had that opportunity with the gospel album. Went up there.
That's right.
Set up a mic in their studio.
Yeah.
And told them to just sing. Just
yeah.
Just sing.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, and we used about three songs, I think, or portions of about 3 songs, and maybe one song where I played with them.
Now, was that on This Train, or what was that?
Yeah, it was on This Train.
That was it. Yeah.
There's maybe a couple of interludes in one song. And I went back maybe a couple of years later, and I recorded a whole record that I still haven't put out on them. I just haven't. COVID was probably the time that I should have gotten that record done. But I have a record in the can with them that I'm hopefully going to release here at some point soon. But that would be the only instance where I directly, my association with some artists that I've booked, I've worked with. But the cool thing is I see some of these other artists that I've booked on the road, like George Benson, for instance. I did a show in Atlanta before he came to Birmingham, which inspired me. I opened up for him, which was the most terrifying thing in my life. Joey Somerville and I just prayed to God that he wasn't, how artists come in the wings as the opening act is on. I was just praying to God that George wasn't going to show up
throw you
in the
wings. Did he?
No, he didn't. Thank God. But I did get to meet him. And so when he came to the Alice Stevens Center, there was that connection that I had met him. So that happens a lot. I'll play with these artists and then I'll see them somewhere else. And the Yellow Jackets, same thing. I did a show down in Aruba and ran into the guys from the Yellow Jackets. I'd already booked them at the Alice Stevens Center. Like, hey, man, what are you doing here? I played last night, And so that's really cool.
It's such a good feeling.
Yeah, it's a great feeling to have that kind of camaraderie with artists that I grew up idolizing,
That's such a good feel.
Yeah,
that whole scene with you being there. And, I mean, it's
a lot of fun.
It's just like intrinsically cool. It's just like a very good fit.
Yeah.
So on July 31st, we're going to have you here in what we now call the Song Theater. And, we got 216 seats. We designed it to be like a living room, like a sound studio with seats. And so you're perfect for that picture. We like to put the picture in the frame. You're not far away. So I want to encourage everybody to come see that show here. Yeah,
it's a beautiful room. We love to play it. The intimacy is the thing that really draws me to wanting to come back here and play.
You,
I absolutely love it. And I've always said that if I was going to design a theater that was my own, where I could produce shows and have artists come in, it would look exactly like that.
Thank you, brother. Yeah. That's exactly what we want to do. Something. I mean, to complement, not replicate. When you look at Alice Stevens Center and the venues there, when you look at the Lyric Theater, I mean, they all have their nuance. Saturn, a great club downtown. Whether it's standing, sitting, packing in, mosh friendly or not mosh friendly. We just knew it. We wanted something that was a little different. A little bit more like a home theater. With so we can't make bank with Celine Dion, but we can have what's artistically appropriate and for the theater. And
I love it. Absolutely love it. Great job, and the artists that you're bringing in too. Great programming.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah.
Thank you, man. Well, Eric, thanks, brother, for being here.
It's my pleasure, man. This has been great.
I can't thank you enough. Just anything you need from us to promote you through our networks. I mean, we're complimented and honored to do that. And I always say, I mean, I'll wrap up with this. I mean, everybody always says get a mentor,
right?
And so, and it's kind of hard to get mentors. You have friends you hang with and that kind of thing, but it is easier to find. Maybe call them mentors, maybe call them heroes. And you just look at somebody's life and their portfolio, and you say to yourself, I want to be a little bit more like that guy. I'm going to watch that guy.
Right.
You're one of those guys for me,
man.
bro.
Thank you so much. Bruce. I appreciate that.
I mean that sincerely. I think you are for a lot of people.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You make the Magic City magic, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, man.
Right. Thanks, brother.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to Imagine, Create, Inspire, the podcast. For more information on the Shelby County Arts Council, please visit www.shelbycountyartscouncil.com.